Welcome back to episode 4 of Talking Baseball with Last Raps Baseball. Today we are going to be joined again by Ray Brown, and the topic for today is developing pitchers and throwers and things to look for in the throwing motion and throwing mechanics, and also flaws that we can look for and try to identify and try to correct in the throwing motion. It is said that the most difficult thing to do in professional baseball is to hit a ball. And in fact, in any sport, to be able to hit a round ball with a round bat, very difficult. Over the years, I would argue that the most difficult thing is to be able to throw a ball properly. And certainly as the game has evolved, you can see that there's millions of dollars each year at the major league level on the disabled list with players with injured shoulders and injured elbows. And certainly being able to throw and throw correctly is something that is needed at all levels of the sport. So today we're going to start to get involved in some discussions with regards to throwing and throwing mechanics and throwing motions. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask any of our guests in the future, please feel free to add it to the comment section. And the next time that we have them on, we can try to squeeze some of those questions in. So sit back, relax, and we've got another round with Ray Brown coming forward right now. We're joined again by Ray Brown from his home in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is Ray's third visit to Last Raps Baseball, to talk baseball, and we're happy to have him back. Welcome back, Ray.
Thanks for having me. Always glad to be here, Fred.
Excellent. And today we're going to take it a little bit different. I talked to Ray earlier and I said we want to get into talking a little bit about pitching. And what we want to talk about today is some ground zero stuff and starting to build our way along. And so I asked Ray before we got going, I said, we want to talk a little bit about a foundation for the kids. And generally about getting the kids to be able to play catch and proper catch. And so I'd like Ray to be able to give us some insight on what he feels is important to him when we get kids out there trying to play catch and working on their arms.
Well, that's a good place to start, Fred, because in my career, I've had a lot of moms and dads that they would bring their child to me to teach him some pitching mechanics, and we go out there and play catch. And the first thing I say to him is, I says, he shouldn't be here yet. The first thing we have to work on is how to play catch to make sure that the arm is working properly. And what I mean by that the arm is fluid and rhythmic, that there are no glitches in the throw. The arm is finishing across its way we're supposed to finish, and so that we can throw the ball we're trying to throw it to. And so what we do is we spend time with the young guy, giving him a few drills so he learns to throw the ball down with his fingers on top of the ball so the ball isn't going up in the air and making an arc. And there's a drill I use called the bounce drill. And what it does is lets him make the circle with his arm and throw the ball down. Circle with his arm, throw the ball down. So we're looking for a rhythmic, fluid arm motion. Once we get a fluid, rhythmic arm motion, then we can start playing catch. And if we can play catch, if anybody can play catch, we can teach them how to pitch. So we start right at the beginning, how to play catch.
One of the things that I picked up from you when we've worked together in the past, and that is when you're talking to young children about the fingers when you release the ball, and the fingers are going to help guide the ball in the direction. And you often say it should be like the tongue of a reptile. and when we release that ball, that's where we want to be aiming the fingers in that direction. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, Ray.
Well, what I learned, I guess, through my life as throwing the ball and finally becoming a pitcher, and especially once I became a coach, we talk about the fingers. The fingers are the last thing that touches the baseball. So the fingers are really the director. They're gonna, wherever you finish your fingers, that's where the ball is going to go. So if your fingers are finishing towards your target, the ball is going to go towards your target. And so we talk, for that to happen, the fingers have to finish down and through the ball. So you're always pushing down on the ball so you can throw it flat or throw it into the ground. And again, that's a skill you teach outfielders. That's a skill you teach infielders because, again, when they throw the ball, you want the ball to be flat or into the ground. We can teach them how to catch the ball that bounces, but we can't teach them how to catch the ball that's over their head. So we work a lot with making sure their fingers are on top of the ball and they're throwing the ball down. I never get upset with a player if he's throwing too many balls into the ground. I get upset if he's throwing the balls over somebody's head. All right, because that means he's still behind the ball. He's throwing the bottom of the ball, so the ball's going up. So the fingers have to finish down through the ball, so we get the ball where we want to throw it to.
So when another thing that we chatted about a little bit is we talked about how a player's arm works and how we get them to work. Maybe you can tell the audience, what are the things that you look for when you talk about getting a pitcher or a thrower's arm to work properly?
Well, the first thing I look for when I see a person throw the ball is how does their arm work? Is it fluid and rhythmic? Are there a couple of glitches in it? If there's a couple of glitches, then we have to try to fix those glitches because eventually that's going to lead to an arm problem. And once we fix the glitches, the arm is fluid and rhythmic. Now, I don't care if he's throwing over the top, sidearm, 3/4, or he's a submariner. The arm still has to have a fluid, rhythmic action. It prevents injury. It gives us a stronger throw, and it gives us a more accurate throw. And so a guy's gonna be able to play this game a whole lot longer. When I was a young guy, and we'd go out and as a pitcher, we wanted to pitch the 9 innings. We used to keep pitch counts, but the pitch count was only used so we knew how much we were going to run the next day. Guys used to pitch 9 innings, 10 innings, 11 innings, throw 100 to 130, 140 pitches. In fact, I was watching a documentary with Nolan Ryan, and he says there were games he'd throw 150, 160 pitches. He says, well, that won't happen nowadays because there's more concerns with guys breaking down. Well, Nolan Ryan he broke down when he was 48 years old, and that's from throwing the ball. That's from pitching for 25 years. But he never broke down during his prime because he had a strong base. His legs were strong, and his throwing action was smooth and rhythmic. So he was able to go out there and throw. And he took care of his arm. He made sure that he did his running. He made sure that he always had his long undershirt for on chilly nights to keep your arm warm. So he took care of his arm. I got to hear a guy named Bob Fellertech talk one time. He came to visit us at Edmonton. He was making a tour, and so we got him to come to our practice. And when he talked about pitchers, because he was a pitcher, he's a Hall of Famer, and he said he always had his long undershirt on. When he slept at night, he turned the air conditioner off. He says because I had to make sure that I took care of my arm. And again, he's a guy who pitched a long time. He's a guy back in those days was throwing high 90s. I think they had him on some kind of a gun where he threw almost 100 miles an hour, and this was like in the 30s. So the arm care, fluid, rhythmic actions, fingers down through the ball. That's what I look for. If I see those 3 things, we can teach him how to pitch. Now we'll establish a release point for him, and a release point is where does he have to let the ball go to throw it where he wants to throw it. One of the things that I do with pitchers is when we go out and we throw, I don't spend too much time with telling them what I want them to do. As far as stay back and make sure that you're landing here or landing there. I ask them to throw the ball to a certain spot. So I might say, throw the ball down and away to a right-handed hitter. If they can throw the ball down and away to a right-handed hitter, they're going to be easy to work with. Because now all we have to do is tweak what we're saying. All right? If you're working with a player, throw the ball down and away, and he's throwing the ball up and in, or he's throwing the ball up and away. Well, now we have to. He's got to find a way, and the key thing is he has to find a way to throw the ball where you're asking him to throw it. He figures that out, he becomes easy to work with. So the way that I coach and instruct now in my later years is a lot different than when I was a young coach. When I was a young coach, I was very hands-on. I'd say you got to have a balance point. You have to stride here. You have to do this, and make sure you do all these things. Well, what I finally discovered is sometimes we give them information overload, and there's too many things to think about. Well, we don't want them to think about only one thing: throwing the ball where they're asked to throw it, and making sure the arm is loose, rhythmic, and there's timing, and then find that release point. Find the release point on their own. They can, the more things they can learn to find on their own, the less chances they're going to forget that, because they've done it on their own, and now they can repeat it, which is going to help them become very successful.
So, just stepping back a little bit, and obviously we talked about the things that we look for positively. What would be for coaches out there that you're looking for that would not make the arm rhythmic or fluid? So, what would be type of things that would concern you or should concern when you're looking at a young pitcher when you see things? What are some of the things that you would say would be areas of concern?
Well, sometimes an arm that doesn't get a full downward circle, so it comes up, so it's called a short arm. Sometimes a short arm hurries the body, and now you have to hurry your arm, and the ball is usually going to be up. All right, and so like again, I like a nice long arm. I like over the top, 3/4, or even sidearm is fine, but the arm still is long. And when I say the arm is long, that means as it comes out of the glove, it goes down by the hip, and then starts coming up. It goes down by the hip and then starts coming up. So I like a nice long arm. It lets us keep a strong backside, and so that we can get out in front and throw the ball to the best of our ability. And so you want to make sure that when the landing foot hits the ground, the arm should almost be at the shoulder. So there should be hit with the glove foot, and then here comes the ball. And it shouldn't be hit, glove foot, here's the ball. Hit, glove foot, here's the ball. Everything's going too fast. It's similar to a hitter, Fred. There's lots of hitters that they step and hit. They step and hit. They stride and hit. Well, those are two actions, not one. So as we know, there's a stride and then there's a swing. It's not stride swing. There's a separation and then there's a swing. Well, for a pitcher, the separation is when that foot hits the ground, and now here comes the ball. Foot hits the ground, now here comes the ball. So there's going to be that little bit of pause. It shouldn't be real fast. All right. Now we have a real fast motion and not a fluid motion. So that's gonna make you hurry the arm, which means you're going to release the ball way too soon. Another thing we look for is, are they throwing across their body? And when I say what I mean by that is that when they stride, are they striding towards their arm side? All right? Are they striding towards their arm side? If they're striding towards their arm side as they throw the ball, they can't get across. So they can't finish that throw to the opposite hit. All right? And that's going to cause a problem with the arm, because again, it won't be rhythmic. Now, there are a few guys in the major leagues who throw across their body, and they're very successful. All right, they're very successful.
First guy I think of is Felix Hernandez. Felix Hernandez really threw across his body for the Seattle Mariners.
And there was the guy from the Angels. I forgot his name. He went to Long Beach State, and I should remember his name. But he played with the Angels, and he threw across his body for a long time. But when you watch their arm work, it was fluid and rhythmic. All right. Now, and then you'll have guys that stride open. So that means when their landing foot comes down, that toe is pointed maybe towards the opposite batter's box, or even more than that. So now their front shoulder is taking them away from their target. So now their arm's got to travel a whole lot farther to get where you want the ball to go. All right. Now again, there are some guys who do that stride open. All right. There are some guys that do that, but again, when you watch their arm, there's rhythm, there's tempo, and it's fluid. All right. So when I work with young guys, I'm really big on being on line, and what that means, wherever my pivot foot is, I draw a line from my instep straight towards home plate. straight towards home plate. And when they land, I want them to land on that line. All right. Now we're in a linear direction going towards our target, which means everything is going to be going in the same direction. Everything's going to be going in the same direction, which gives us a better chance to control the inside and the outside. Sometimes Orva's big on this. Orv Franchek, he talks about he has a hard time commanding the inside part of the plate. Well, that's because he's probably closed himself off. He's throwing across his body, and so everything's too hard, so he can't get outside. And usually with guys like that, when I see them, I say, try this. Wow, this is really good. Well, because now they're online, all right, and it feels different, but the result speaks for itself. Now the ball's going where they want it to go. So those are some of the things I look for in the arm action. Is it fluid, rhythmic? Are they throwing across their body? Are they opening too soon? Is the arm nice and long? So that we're able to stay back that little tad longer. So when we land, there comes the arm. It's not land and throw. There needs to be that little bit of separation. And if you go and you Google any major league pitcher, you're going to see before the ball is let go, there is that little bit of separation. There's a land, here comes the ball. There's a land, here comes the ball. It's not land, here comes the ball. Land, here comes the ball. Again, rhythm, tempo, and fluid, and a nice fluid arm.
We began the session tonight with the art of playing catch and how Ray wants arms to work. And we started to discuss the importance of pitcher staying online. So today, Ray, if you could explain to the audience in more detail where you would like pitchers to set up on the rubber and how you encourage young pitchers to stand and maybe what some adjustments they can make from these starting spots.
Sure, that sounds good, Fred. Well, there's a drill that I have when I'm working with young, especially young kids, and I call it the string drill. What I do is I go and I cut. I think there's 6 foot long pieces of string, just kite string, and they have a nail in each end. And I give one of those to each player. Each player has their own, because I want all players to be on the line when they throw the ball. And they'll put one of the nails down where they start from, which is from their instep, and the other one right in front of it. So as they're playing catch, I want the landing foot to come down on that string. And they get instant feedback because they see where they land, all right? And then now they know that their landing foot's coming down in the direction they're going to throw the ball, which means now your front shoulder is taking you where you want to go. If your front shoulder is pointing towards the other batter's box or towards the first baseline, then that's the direction you should be throwing the ball, because your shoulder is going to lead your shoulder is like the sight on a gun. Wherever that shoulder is going, that's the way the ball should go. So I want that landing foot to come down on that string, because now your shoulder is going right to your partner, and that's where the ball should go. All right. I do, and now once they do that and it becomes more familiar with them, we can eventually get rid of the strings, because now they've made the adjustment of understanding what being on line is. When I'm working with pitchers in a bullpen situation and we're on the rubber, for me it doesn't matter what side of the rubber they use. They want to use the right side, the left side, or the middle. I don't get too excited about that. And only because when I was a young pitcher a long time ago, we were taught if you're a right-hander, use the right side, left-hander, use the left side. Well, as I evolved as a pitcher and I started becoming better, I would use the right side when there was nobody on base, but then when there was somebody on base, I used the left side of the rubber. I was a right-handed pitcher. And I used the left side of the rubber because it was easier to see the runner, and I was quicker trying to pick the guy off at first base. So I had to control the running game. I didn't throw real hard. I wasn't going to strike out 20 guys a game. And so for me to control the running game, I wanted to get the ball to the first baseman as quick as I could on a pickoff, all right? And I wanted to see how far he was off. If he had a short lead, I just made my pitch, all right? And then as I evolved as a coach, I saw more and more right-handers using the left side, and I saw some left-handers using the right side, and they had good results. And then I said, you know what? It really doesn't matter what side of the rubber you're going to use, as long as you're getting the result that you're looking for. All right? Because, again, at the end of the day, we're looking for results. We want positive results from our pitcher. Is he getting people out? Is he throwing strikes? And so what I do is I see where the athlete lines up on the rubber. I give him his string. He puts it down, and that's why I want him to come down. And then we'll talk about throw the ball. I want you to throw the ball outside. I want you to throw the ball inside. So he starts finding his release points. All right? I want him to establish one part of the rubber where he knows when he goes out there he can throw strikes. And what will happen as he evolves, he'll start using the right side, the left side, because he'll experiment during his bullpen session. Geez, on the left side, my ball does this. On the right side, my ball does this. When I'm down the middle, the ball does this. So he'll start finding what his ball does by using the different parts of the rubber. But so for me, wherever he wants to start is fine with me. It's fine with me. Will I make an adjustment with him? Well, if we have to. If I find he's having a hard time finding the outside part of the plate or the inside part of the plate, then I'll say, well, let's try to move you more to the center of the rubber. Because at the end of the day, when he goes out there to pitch, we want him to have success. And success for a pitcher is throwing strikes. All right? Success for a pitcher is throwing strikes. And then the next step of that success is locating the strikes when you throw the ball. When you throw the ball down and away, the ball's going to go down and away. When you throw the ball up and in, the ball's going to go up and in. So you're not going to set up and in and miss down and away. All right? And you'll see that the successful major league pitchers have all mastered that. When the catcher sets up down and away, the ball's going to be in that area. It's not going to be inside someplace. All right? The ones who are successful, like when they talk about Greg Maddux, he was successful. He knew when he threw the ball where it was going to go. Any successful pitcher knows when he throws the ball where it's going to go. And now he wants to make sure that he stayed on top of the ball, so he's getting the right bite that he wants, and he's not missing too much up in the strike zone. But he knows the ball's going to be in that location. All right.
Yeah, and so one of the things that you touched on is about, obviously you want to throw the ball where you want it to go, and sometimes that's easier said than done. There's a lot of guys that have plus arms. I remember we had a kid one time back east, had the younger brother, but the older brother played at the University of Niagara. I can't remember the last name now. He was a 6'10" righty who threw upwards of 100 miles an hour. But the problem is that when you go back and you look at his stats, he had an ERA up around 10, and he walked more than, he wasn't striking out a batter an inning. He was walking close to a batter an inning. Now, when you have a guy that's, obviously in that particular case, he's 6'10", but you have guys that are sometimes hard throwers, but they can't command where the ball is going to go. They have no control. They can't command where their ball is going. What are some of the things that you can provide to those pitchers to give them some thoughts about how they're able to either find a release point or to be able to start to be able to throw to the spot where you want them to throw?
Well, I think some of that is mental preparation of having an idea where you want to throw the ball and throwing the ball to that spot. So, like as we talked earlier in our discussion, if I ask the pitcher to throw the ball down and away to a right-hander, and the ball goes up and into a right-hander, all right, and then he does that 3 times in a row, I ask them, where do I want you to throw the ball to? And they'll tell me. I says, well, then why are you throwing it up and in? All right, because a lot of times there is no thought process. They just throw the ball. He goes, oh yeah, I'm trying. I said, well, you're not trying, because if you were trying, I'd at least see the ball go down into the dirt to the right-handed to the right-handed hitter. So you're just throwing the ball. What you're trying to do is you're trying to throw the ball as hard as you can. And yeah, I want you to throw the ball as hard as you can with command. So you may have to let off the gas a little bit to get the ball where you want to go. There's a drill that I use when I'm trying to increase velocity with my pitchers. So we'll go and we'll throw a bullpen session, and a bullpen session is about 70 pitches. And I'll leave 10 to 15 pitches at the end And after our bullpen session, I'll say, okay, what do you want to work on with these last 15 pitches? Maybe he had problems that day with his breaking ball, or he had problems with his changeup. So he wants to use those last 15 pitches to work on that. If he's had a good session where he was happy with his breaking ball and with his changeup, then I'll say, let's work on your fastball. And so what I'll do is the catcher just stands tall, and I'll say, I want you to reach back and throw it as hard as you can. And I'll have my radar gun. And most of the time it's maybe a mile faster, sometimes 2 miles faster, but it's all over the place. It's all over the place. And I don't mind that, because as we start throwing the ball harder, release points change, because now the body and the arm is working quicker. All right? And so as the new becomes the normal, we'll find the new release point for that new arm speed and that new body speed. All right? So it's having an idea of what you're trying to get to, all right? And so in that situation, we're trying to get to a stronger velocity, so we don't care about the command right now. We're going to care about the command maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe a month, because now we're throwing the ball harder. Now we'll start trying to throw. Now we'll start throwing the ball where we want to throw it. But to get the new velocity, we're not going to have much command at all. All right, because the body's going faster and the arm's going faster. So those are things that coaches have to look for. If you're asking a player to throw the ball down and away, and the ball's missing up and in or up and away, it's all release point. And the reason he can't throw the ball there is because the body's going too fast and the arm's going too fast, so there's no rhythm. There was a great pitcher, he's a Hall of Famer, named Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax's first few years in the major leagues, he wasn't very successful. In fact, they didn't think he was going to be very good. Big left-hander, could throw the ball 90-some miles, well, probably almost 100 miles an hour. And so in maybe 1961, 62, early 60s, there was a catcher named Norm Sherry. Norm Sherry was the catcher with the Dodgers, and they were doing a bullpen session, and Norm Sherry mentioned to Sandy Koufax, maybe take a little bit off. He says, because you're taking a little bit off, it's still going to be hard. Well, he took a little bit off, which gave him better body control, more rhythm, more tempo, and all of a sudden, he had the 6th greatest years of anybody ever in Major League Baseball. He was just amazing. He learned, because he learned to have command of my body, so there's rhythm and tempo, so I can establish a good release point to throw the ball where I want to throw it. So it's common with a lot of young guys. They want to throw the ball as hard as they can, and not too concerned with where it's going to go. And you'll see some of those guys in the major leagues. I talked to as we know, there's 30 major league teams, and every team has at least 12 pitchers, maybe 13 pitchers, and every one of those pitchers throws someplace in the 90s, and some guys in the high 90s, but they're all in the 90s someplace. Well, why do some of those teams have great success and some have no success at all? Because they may have the teams with no success have their 12 pitchers, but maybe only 3 or 4 can pitch. The other guys throw hard, and the ball's all over the place. And when they do throw it over the plate, it's down the middle, and the major league hitter can hit a fastball, and she goes to the land of happiness. So they've got to spend more time with those guys, making them understand the purpose of command. Whether you're throwing 98 or 96, all right, or 98 or 95, the guy who can command at 95 is going to be very successful. Where the guy who can't command at 98, he won't be there long, because he'll have no command of his pitch where it's going to go.
We're joined again by Ray Brown, and tonight we've covered the art of playing catch, reasons to stay online, where we want the ball to go. But now I'd like to lead into something a little bit that Ray is big on, and that is downward taper. Whether it be a positional player or a pitcher, maybe you can explain to the audience what are some of the positive things for throwers to throw with downward taper on the ball.
Okay, that sounds good, Fred. Anyway, what downward taper means is when you're throwing the ball is going to be flat, or the ball is going to be tapering down towards the ground. In the game of baseball, there aren't very many times when you want to throw the ball with an upward trajectory. All right, upward trajectory means you're going to throw it over somebody's head. Well, you throw it over somebody's head, what you're doing is you're giving the offense a greater chance of scoring, because they're going to get another base or two bases. You're gonna let them score a run. So every position, pitchers, catchers, outfielders, infielders, they throw the ball with a downward trajectory. That means their fingers are on top of the ball. Their fingers are on top of the ball and they throw the ball. Now, if you're an outfielder and you pick it up by the foul line and you've got that kind of an arm, and there's a guy who's going to score from second, and there's there's two outs and you got to throw him out, then you'll have a little more angle on the ball, because you know you can throw it that far. And we don't care about the other runners that are going to take bases. We want to throw that guy out. So there are times in the game when you can have the different angle of the ball, where it can have more upward plane, because we don't care about the backup runners taking other bases. But most of the time, if there's a ball hit to the gap, which is down the line or left or right center, and you got a guy on first, and we want to try to get the guy out the plate, and we want to keep the batter runner from taking an extra base, we're going to throw the ball on a downward plane to the cutoff man, so that he can cut the ball and throw it where he needs to throw it, whether it's home or to third or wherever he's called to throw the ball to. Because if we overthrow that cutoff man, they get a run and we lose a base, which puts another guy in scoring position. So for a pitcher, downward plane is important, because the ball is always going to be going straight or down. All right. So if I want to throw the ball up and in to a right-hander, and for me, when we work with our pitchers, up and in is at his hands. So wherever he's holding his hands when it's time to hit, that's up and in for me. That's not at his head. So what I've learned and I've experienced on my own is that if I can throw the ball up and in to the hitter's hands, that looks like a strike, and we may get a swing. And if he takes it, we may get a called strike. All right, because it's that close to the inside part of the plate. If I throw it up by his head, he probably won't swing at it, and it's going to be a ball. So we work a lot on throwing the ball flat, up and in, like towards his hands. And so what I tell our pitchers, when we're going up and in, we're going to throw the ball between the catcher's head and his shoulders. All right. So if it's a right-handed hitter, we're going to throw the ball between his head and his gloved shoulder, because that's usually where his hands are. It's right above the belt. All right, right above the belt, but right where his hands are supposed to be. All right, and that ball is going to be flat. If we're going to throw the ball down and away, we're going to throw the ball with a downward taper, because we want to see the hitter. We want to have the hitter see two planes of the ball. We want him to see it high at one time, and then low at the other time. All right, so the ball's always going down. Well, the only way that can happen is that when you're playing catch, you make your fingers finish on top of the ball. So you're throwing down through the ball. When I was a young guy, they called it snapping your wrist. All right, so guys would snap their wrist. But what I found through my experience, just because you snap your wrist doesn't mean you're throwing the ball down. You're throwing down through the ball. Because some guys snap their wrist and the ball still goes up because they're behind the ball. All right, so I said, well, I'm going to change that language to fingers on top of the ball, throwing it down. And so there's drills that I use with young kids and even some old kids that come to play with us during the summer, where I say, I want your fingers throwing down through the ball. Yeah, and it feels funny for them because they've been under the ball for almost their whole careers. But once they get the concept, all of a sudden they become a much better player, because now the ball is going where they want to throw it. All right, so down through the ball, which is tapering, as opposed to throwing the bottom of the ball up. We want to throw the top of the ball down.
Well, this concludes episode 4 of Talking Baseball. We'll be joined again by Ray Brown in the near future to talk pitching. In the meantime, we have a couple of other guests that we have lined up, and we're looking forward to having over the next couple of weeks. So thanks again for watching. If you liked the video, please be sure to hit the thumbs up. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And once again, this has been another Last Raps Baseball video production. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you again.